you would think that a family where there isn't conflict is the stronger family. But the reality is the stronger family is the family that knows rupture and repair. We treat others how we treat ourselves.
Mhm.
Another tool that comes up for me is, I don't know if you're familiar with the 3 H's, but this is something that just, for any parent listening might be helpful. And the 3 H's are simply
Hi, my name is Terry Willis, and welcome to the Power of Family podcast. This show is all about what happens when adults stop trying to control kids and start connecting with them. And let me introduce you now to my co host, Dr. Sonia Toledo.
Hi, Terry. Thank you so much for that. And I am really grateful that you even thought about this idea. I think it's a very important idea to just talk about how could we strengthen the family. I am a mother of 2 sons. Right now, they're in their 30s, but I know that one of the struggles that I had was listening to my sons. My oldest son, we clashed. We still do in communication, and we almost have to set up our intention before we even have communication, especially in certain topics. There's some trigger topics that we have, and we know which they are, and we have a talking stick or an object that we use literally so we could hold the person who's holding that object as the person who's talking, and the other person is totally listening. And let me tell you, I've learned what listening actually looks like. And it's not me preparing my answer. And I realized that through, especially in his high school days, there were times where there were some really difficult situations that happened. By me truly listening, he was able to think through and talk through his own solution. By me being totally present with him and just showing love, because if I start making faces, he would be like, "Mom, you're not listening. Mom, you're not listening." So they feel it when you're truly listening. So my experience with connection with my young people has been a journey, but I've learned a lot about myself, and I learned a lot about how we could really intentionally put practices in place to make those connections stronger. So without further ado, we have a special guest, Judy Hall, family therapist. And we're so excited, Judy, that you're here because I am excited about today's conversation. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thank you so much. Yes, my name is Julie Hall. I have been a therapist for about 15 years. Prior to that, I was in the tech world in all different areas of the tech sector, nonprofit, startup, corporate, government, and did a pivot. And part of the pivot, the reason I engaged the pivot was because I had a really powerful therapeutic experience for myself where I was the client.
Mhm.
And it really, I always describe it as it really opened up the floodgates for me of how valuable it is to experience very explicitly what it's like to be heard, be understood, be seen. And so, yeah, that was really the catapult for me to shift careers. And so I've been doing this work for about 15 years. Like I said, I primarily focus in systems work, which means I work in dyads, triads, certainly individual work also. And I do a lot of trauma focused work, trauma reprocessing. And then personally, I have been married for almost 20 years. We have an almost 13-year-old daughter. And so that's
So you're putting it
it.
into practice.
Yes, it is. It's quite the experience. And so I am certainly learning too. So much I think of our parenting journey is growing together
Yes,
in a
I
way.
love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Say real quickly, what parent do I need to be now?
Yeah.
Because as they grow, they need a different type of parenting. Yeah, you know what I'm talking
Mhm.
about.
Yes, yes, it's so true. Just a different in their different developmental seasons, we are showing up differently. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense.
Well, again, I want to thank you for coming on our show here. And I'm going to move us forward, and I'm going to just ask the first question here. What makes generational gaps feel more intense today?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Terry. I'll say I'll kind of weave in personal and obviously like my professional experience. On a personal note, my background is Indian American. I, was born and raised in the States, but my parents immigrated here from India. And so there were not only generational differences, but there were cultural differences. And I really grew up in an era where it was a little bit of like you're seen and not really heard. Right. You obey, you follow the rules, right? And there wasn't a lot of sort of attention on your like the emotional landscape of the child. But so much of that I think is, again, we treat others how we treat ourselves. And and I grew up
I'm sorry, you have to say that again, because that should not be like just treat others how we treat ourselves, how important that is to be heard, to understand.
Right. We treat others how we treat ourselves, which means if I am not paying very much attention to my emotional landscape, it is likely that I am not paying attention to others' emotional landscape, right? If I am of the mindset of like, power through, white knuckle through, just get it done, then that is often how I treat the landscape of others and my expectation of others. And I grew up, I grew up in a single parent home. My mom worked really hard and she loved in the best way that she could. And yet there were responsibilities that really took up most of the space. There wasn't a lot of space for her, capacity for her to tend to, again, emotional landscape. And so I think, as far as the question, Terry, I think a component of it is that the norms to some extent are different now in that there is so much more conversation about mental health, emotional health in ways that there weren't before. And kids are really responding to that. They're really responding to what it looks like to tap into their temperature, right? Their mood, their internal experience, feelings. And so I think that can intensify the gap because generations prior, I don't think had that kind of attention. I think certainly social media technology that plays a huge role in, widening the generational gap, right? I think there's also a climate that we're in that can often feel polarizing, like this is right, this is wrong, this is good, this is bad.
What side are you in?
What side are you? Exactly. That again can intensify gaps and make it more difficult to come together, to bridge. And I think our kids now, they're also living in a landscape, and maybe this was to some extent generationally a part of things also, but they're dealing with environmental crises, things systemic crises and things that are really important, I think, for that there's a burden that they carry that they talk about amongst each other, but it's very difficult, I think, maybe for them, or it can be difficult for them to engage those conversations with their caregivers, right? Their parents. Yeah.
I think that when you said there's a burden that they carry,
yes,
there is this feeling that as adults are listening to what's happening in the crisis of this world, and they, the news it's huge, and there's also issues like what you mentioned, systemic issues, world issues, relationship issues, all kinds of stuff. I don't think adults really make the connection that children are also carrying this burden as well.
right.
And they make up on their own mind what it means.
They are making meaning of it.
They're making meaning of it.
Exactly.
And that's where it becomes very critical and a crisis and a conflict. Because
exactly
adults here are thinking, oh, you should be just doing X, Y, and Z. But then the child is thinking, but I'm worried about this and I'm worried about that, but we're not listening to them.
Right. And if we're not holding space for them, right, then they are making meaning just again based on how they're responded to, how they're not responded to, or, again, based on their limited perspective. And I think, again, there's just a lot of opportunity. So it's so beautiful that the two of you are building this platform because again, there's so much opportunity to bridge that gap.
And talk about it. And even, if everybody could walk away today with one tool or one insight to build their connection with their children, teenagers, little ones, all ages, closer. And it's really all about being intentional, beginning some kind of commitment to it as an adult. So share with us what kind of patterns, you have seen in your therapy practices.
Yeah, I think, some of the patterns I see is like a defensive stance. I think it can be difficult for particularly parents who are, often doing their best and, trying to get it right to hear that they're not getting it right. And so defensiveness can be a reactive posture, right? And when a child experiences that defensiveness, they can often shut down, right? Or they can even double down in their perspective rather than what the intention is to bridge the gap. What I also find is that parents can unintentionally minimize and devalue the emotional experience for their children. And that's just, again, based on their own condition, right? If you grow up with the mindset of you just keep moving forward, then to acknowledge or sit in the emotional landscape sometimes feels unproductive to the parent, right? When in reality, what I really try to do is bring in some psycho ed to the family dynamic that it is in fact connecting, it is in fact of value, and it actually accelerates growth. So
Wow.
yeah, I think that's another pattern that, I can see. I can also often see withdrawal and shutdown, particularly when on the child's end, particularly when they feel like their parent isn't attuned. So, what you were sharing before, Sonia, as far as your, what you noticed about your son, right? When he can sense those micro moves, right? When you are attuned, I mean, he's calling you out, which I think is great, but oftentimes children shut down,
Yes. Yeah.
when they feel like attunement is lost. Yeah.
Yes. And you mentioned about the value of emotions. I have to say, I grew up where emotions were not valued. We suppress them. We don't have them. And if you do have them, I was growing up believing that I'm too sensitive, or she's always crying. I still cry,
Yeah.
because I get, I'm an empath, but it's a taboo, especially mental health illness is also a taboo. So we just don't talk about what's really happening with ourselves, with our emotions. So that is a gap that I grew up with. And now, when I brought up my sons, I thought that it would be a good idea to let me have you share your emotions. And I think for the most part, we did pretty well because we know how to communicate. And like I said, we put tools in place when we really need to communicate.
Yeah, so that's, it's defensiveness I sometimes see as a pattern. It's devaluing and minimizing the emotional experience. I think and then the withdrawal sometimes. I think the other thing that I often see in the parent-child dynamic is a focus on the behavior outside of what's underneath. Right? So a focus on, okay, the grades are dropping, or they're talking back, or they're doing this thing, rather than tapping into the curiosity of what's actually happening underneath.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's the source? What's the reason?
That's right.
Underlining what's the trigger that's actually having you be, disrespectful, or, dismissive, or whatever children do. There's so many things that we get irritated by what they do, but we're looking at the behaviors. We're not necessarily looking at why they are behaving that way.
As I listened and I heard all of the areas that have touched on me. And I wanted to jump in, and I just want to speak on growing up. And everything that you were saying, it fits into the generation that I came up in, as opposed to what I'm seeing in the young adults today. We just had that upbringing where what mama and daddy said, we abided by it.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I find it hard trying to communicate with the young people. And we're trying to search right now and find these answers. How do we bridge that generational gap? And I'm going to stick with this until we have made an impact in our society, in our communities. Because if we don't, then we will continue to go down this path where as adults, we know where this is headed.
Yeah.
Because when we lose that respect and love for one another, and especially for your parents and your grandparents, then we know that something is truly lost.
Yeah.
And we're in trouble.
Yeah.
More so than what we think.
That's so good.
And that's why I'm so grateful that you came up with the power of family, right? Because that's what we want to do. We want to build the family infrastructure to be powerful. It's, we always say it starts at home, but it also begins at home, right? So the problems start at home as well.
That's right.
This is so awesome. So what are some of the tools that you use with your
Yeah. Well, I will say, to the point that you're making as far as can begin at home, some of the challenges can begin at home, and some of the, the strengthening, the security begins at home. I want to, absolutely validate that. In my work with clients, almost always I spend time, even with individuals, I spend time with them on their experience of their family of origin.
Mm-hmm.
As a marital therapist, the lens with which I use as far as looking at any issue that we're facing is the lens of relationship. And
Wow.
our most formative relationship is often the one that we've had with our family of origin. So
Yes.
the work that the two of you are doing again is the source work, right? And and so the more that we can strengthen that relationship, the more opportunity that individuals really have to thrive
Yes.
and to, show up in their full potential and their optimal. So as far as tools, there's a great book actually out there called Peaceful Parent, Happy Child. And it's written by the author's name is Dr. Laura Markham. And she talks about how when we are navigating challenge with our children, she describes this kind of three-pronged process. Okay, it's a three-step process. And the first step in the process is when you are noticing conflict, challenge with your child. The first step is to connect with yourself. Connect with yourself. Tap into what is the story that I'm telling myself about myself in this moment. Is it that I'm failing? Right? Is it that I'm rejected? Is it that I'm alone? It is really important that we first check in with ourselves and regulate our nervous system so that we have some space to co-regulate our children's nervous system, that they have, right? They need something to borrow. When they are dysregulated, they are essentially looking to borrow from the nervous system of their secure attachment.
Wow.
Right? Their attachment figure. And so if we are dysregulated, they got nothing to borrow from, right? So that is primary, is connect with self, ground self, come back into our truth, into our sourcing. And then the second step is to connect with their emotions.
Yeah.
Connect with what they are feeling. And then the third step is to correct. But so often what happens is we go immediately into the third step.
We go into
correction. Exactly. And that often goes sideways.
Yes.
Right? Or actually exacerbates the problem because they don't feel seen and they don't feel heard. right? And they need a moment for their lights to come back on.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? Because otherwise they push back against correction, right? Not because they're bad kids, right? But because there is something going on there again that they need some regulation around.
Yeah. And that's the perpetuation that we're doing from families, from generation to generation. We continue to keep the problem alive because we're not really starting with ourselves. So, where is my stuff coming from? Like, why am I agitated? Why am I frustrated? Why am I, whatever that's going on for me, I can't be present.
That's exactly right.
Or
But that is the $1 million question. Why? It's the $1 million question that young adults ask, and far too often parents just are not there to answer that question, especially given how at their fingertips they have what? Social media. They have social media to turn to, and it takes up all of their time and attention. And there's the conversation. It's lost.
I think that's such a good
There
point.
lies the generational gap.
I think that's such a good point.
As kids, we all came up feeling the same thing about the adults in our lives at that time. But yet now we are here now, and we have gone down that journey, down that road, and we know, well, we would like to think that we know how to help them find that solution. But if they don't communicate with us, then we're at an impasse. Where do we go?
Right.
They drift, and we just watch them drift away.
I know.
And blame it on them.
Yes.
I know.
Blame it on the kids.
I
know. Again, you mentioned like if I'm willing, sometimes you're not willing to go internally yourself in order to solve. Like you see the problem out there, but you're not seeing what role you play in the problem.
That's right. That's
with
right.
the child. So if you're not willing to go inside yourself to start thinking about the source of your upset and be calm, because you're those 3 steps that you said, you got to do it as an adult for yourself before you even go to your child and expect them to change their behavior.
That's right. That's right. That's right. It's like, I would say this 3-step process, there's a component of it that is like a practice for a parent to engage their own self-compassion.
Yes.
Right. We treat others how we treat ourselves, like you said. So if I'm not compassionate towards myself, then I have no compassion to give my child. Right. And so this is what we know about compassion. Compassion is infinite. It is not a finite pie, meaning it's not that if I give compassion to this person or too much to myself, then I don't have enough. Compassion breeds compassion. Right. So I think so much of it really starts with our own grounding of self. Another tool that comes up for me is, I don't know if you're familiar with the 3 H's, but this is something that just, for any parent listening might be helpful. And the 3 H's are simply asking my child, do you need to be helped? Do you need to be heard? Or do you need to be hugged?
Oh, I love it. Oh my God, we need to put that in big words.
Yeah.
3 H's: helped.
Well, I would like to add even more.
Or hugged.
Helped, heard, or hugged. Yes.
As we move forward, we will be offering tools for people, for parents, for grandparents, for the kids themselves. We would like to be able to share your tools or add your tools into our toolbox.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think you also tapped into something, Terry, around what, again, like kids have questions, right?
Yes.
They are, things are spinning around for them. You mentioned this too, Sonia, right? They are making meaning. And so often, I think they can feel limited often when they attempt to share with parents, and parents meet them with some kind of certainty, with some kind of answer when they are really looking to have space to process, right? So it's a little bit of like curiosity over certainty is another tool, perhaps, right? To make some room for our children to process on their own. And all we are is a container.
Exactly.
That is
And,
so
and,
powerful.
and we have plans on having these kids come in and speak their minds, tell their side of the story, get the parents and get the adults to listen to them. That is part of what we want to do. Let them talk, let them be heard, and not adults constantly trying to drill into them what their mindset is and what their thinking is. And
That's
you
right.
do this and you do that. We're
That's
going to
right.
give them the mic.
That's right.
We
That's
want us, the adults, to listen to them.
And you said it, the process is so critical for everyone to go through the process of, why am I feeling this? I'm feeling this first. This is what I'm feeling. Why am I feeling this? And let me talk it through. And that's the part that we don't get, because we want to correct.
We want to solve it.
We want to
correct
solve it right away so we can move on.
That's exactly it. Because that's often how we treat ourselves.
Yes, that's how we treat ourselves.
Yes.
We're not willing to go through our own process. That is so. And the thing, when you going back to the three H's, I have to, say it again. Do you need help? Do you need to be heard? Do you need a hug? It is so, that is such a great way to just introduce it as an opening conversation, because sometimes whatever's going on, even if the child is acting out with frustration, is like, tell me what you need right now. Because if it's a hug, my heart is so connected when you said that. Because if it's a hug, let's start with a hug.
Right. Right. Right.
And there's so many times where kids, and we all do it, we carry stuff from what happened during the school day, or what happened with a friend, or just the way I felt when I was taking the test today. And then I go home, or I go to an after school, and I start acting out because of those feelings of what happened earlier in my day. And we don't get to, like, what do you need right now?
That's right. That's right.
This is come on. So I am so excited that we're having this conversation, and we're even getting a little deeper. What are some things that families are doing? We definitely talked about, in their perspective of upbringing children, that escalates more conflict.
I think, again, it's, it's what we talked about, right? It's the defensiveness, right? It's the withdrawal posture. It's the, attempt to solve or correct before we engage any kind of curiosity, right? It's the minimizing, it's the devaluing, it's the lack of us doing our own work, right? But again, there's a lot of opportunity as far as repair, and I'm happy to talk a little bit about that as far as what repair can look like, because this is also what we know through the research, is that a family is stronger when you would think that a family where there isn't conflict is the stronger family. But the reality is the stronger family is the family that knows rupture and repair.
Yes.
It's not the one that is absent of conflict.
Yes.
That is the family that has a stronger level of resilience and security. And so much of the breakdown comes from not the ruptures per se. It's all it's all the conversations that were never had.
That was never had.
Right. And so I think there's so much opportunity again for families, parents particularly, to even just develop some kinds of rituals. Right. Sonia, you mentioned the like holding a stick to identify who's the talking stick, right? There's so many opportunities, I think, to build rituals in family, because what we know about the family structure also is that we need a balance of two things. We need a balance of warmth and structure. Warmth and structure. So often we lead too far either into the warmth or we lead too far into the structure. Personally, in my household, it was a lot of structure.
Yes.
Not a lot of warmth. And that is not a disparagement. It is, again, capacity. It is, knowledge. It's generational, right? And so we need a balance of the two. Structure and warmth is what really strengthens the level of security for our children.
I want to bring it back to, as a parent, if we're not getting that warmth and structure for ourselves, right? Because one of the things that come up for me is, how well are we taking care of ourselves, where we give ourselves enough time to deflect and give ourselves some love for, or do things that we know for ourselves we need in order to be present for our day. I know that we're dealing with the challenges of this world, from the job issues, financials, relationship. The parent themselves are dealing with so much in their own life, but they don't know how to balance that either.
That part again.
Right. So having the energy to be able to give it to our kids, we're so exhausted.
That's exactly right. They need a nervous system to be able to borrow from, right? We treat others how we treat ourselves, right? So again, to your point, Sonia, we need to really give ourselves margin, threshold, to be able to foster and cultivate what we want in our family life.
Wow.
Yeah, for sure.
Powerful.
Yeah, this is
Powerful.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I have to say, Julie, we definitely want to know how to reach out and get to know you, but talk a little bit before we go about some micro rituals that we could start with, and like little baby steps.
Absolutely. I think one of the things I think is really important, I would say in any relationship, I always say, like, I generally work with couples, but I think this really applies in the family dynamic, like parent to child also. And when I think about the characteristic that is the most important in any relationship, like the health and the sustenance of any relationship, it's not necessarily love, communication, respect. For me, and another therapist might say something else, but for me, it is humility. It is humility.
Yeah.
Right? It is taking this one down approach. And part of the experience of humility is giving myself permission to apologize. And that may be another generational gap, in that many of us did not experience from our parents apology, right? That was not something that was given, right? Because maybe the power structure needed to be, preserved, or whatever the reasons were. And yet there is real power in the experience of apology.
Absolutely.
Right?
To be remembered, to be held close, to be shared and passed on.
Yes.
All of it works.
Yes.
All of it. There is no one single answer, but that one has some true foundation in it.
Yes.
A foundation that can be built upon.
Yes, because what I communicate in the apology is, this isn't about power, right? This isn't about, me, exerting power over. This is about connection. Apology communicates connection, right? And it is a model also for our children, right? As far as their own practice of apology. So I would say that's a micro ritual. I think another micro ritual again is a practice of, when I look at my family dynamic, where is there opportunity for us to engage something that is structured, that my children always know is a place for us to experience quality time together and check in. Maybe it's, every night we have dinner together. And dinner time, phones away, and this is just check-in opportunity. Or maybe it's, this Sunday afternoon. No, any other activity is deprioritized, and this is family time.
Yeah.
Right. This is an opportunity for it. This is just about us experiencing quality time together. And that has to be intentional, because the demands of the world are always at our fingertips. They are always at the door.
At our fingertips right here.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And so it's just, again, building these rituals that communicate that the quality time and the experience of our family connection matters. Maybe it's, every Sunday evening we are cooking together.
Yes.
We're making a meal together. We're
Yes.
doing something active together, right? So I think that it's that, right? I think again, just the practice again of, again, just experiencing that quality time and that practice of rupture and repair.
It may sound so simplistic, but it is truly foundational.
Yes.
Because without it, something will be weakened and lessened. And that something is family ties.
Yes.
You will lose the very foundation with which a family stands on if you do not have that simple statement that you have made about time, family time together. If you do not give it, the outside world will, and it may not be nice. And we know it's not nice. So it all begins at home. That simple, simple thought, but it's very scattered in a lot of people's lives that they just cannot apply it.
That's right. That's right. And we are often, so often operating out of one of two pathways, right? We are operating either out of fear or out of love.
Yeah.
Yes.
Either out of fear or out of love. And if we can strengthen the family foundation, then that really it's that secure launching pad for our children to primarily operate out of love over fear.
Oh, fear.
I love it.
You've given us so many nuggets today. We're going to take a lot of these resources and make sure that they are, written down and available to our population. I want you to share this podcast with as many people as possible. Today, we really have learned a lot around why this generational gap actually exists, and it feels more intense. And some of the things you brought up was like, yeah, because, our young people are saying, hey, mental health, we need to be heard. They're asking to be heard. One of the things I think we also have a very courageous I would never talk to my mother about my gender preference. It's just not. And now they're like, no, I'm a them, they, them. I'm a she, I'm a he. They're putting themselves out there, very courageous. So our kids are not us. And that's what we got to remember. And you reminded me that today is like, we won't know who they are and their potential if we don't listen.
That's it. That's it.
And, you also
we are not the experts on them. They are the experts on them.
They're the experts on them. But we're operating out of fear, which is one of the things you brought up too, is that if we're operating out of fear, I'm trying to protect you, I'm trying to control you, so you won't go through what I went through. But guess what? If we don't allow our kids to have a sense of, let's go through the process of what I'm doing, they're going to run into more problems. If we don't say, yeah, this is your process, and this is how you are processing solving your own problems, then I know that when you're out there in society, that you know how to handle yourself.
That's right.
Choosing.
That's right. We are the safe, structured place for them to make meaning.
Yes.
Yes.
And, one of my favorite things that you said was asking them, and this, what do you need? So we usually at the dining room table saying, how was your day? Okay. And that's all you get. Well, what do you need right now? Do you need a hug? Do you need to be heard? Or do you need some help? And then we could get deeper, because then that would be what starts whatever conversation needs to happen. I am so grateful to have you here. And as we're closing up, why don't you share with us, one, you did share with us a book where you got your tips from. Is there any other resource that you would like to share?
I think for parents, I think an incredible book, I don't know if you're familiar, is by Dr. Resma Menakem, My Grandmother's Hands. You familiar with the book? It really does talk so much about what the two of you are putting language to, generational gap and the experience to some extent of generational trauma that we essentially move through, right? There's a beautiful quote that says, pain travels through families until someone is ready to feel it.
Ouch. That
Yeah.
is powerful.
Yeah, pain will travel through families until someone is ready to feel it. Right. And this is the space that the two of you are opening up. Like it's time to feel it.
It's time to feel it.
It's time to feel it. So that is it's an incredible book, My Grandmother's Hands by Dr. Resma Menakem.
Yeah. Tell us, how could we keep in touch with you? How could we reach out? How can we make sure that you are still in the speaking? I would love to have you back because I got a feeling we got a lot more to talk about.
Of course. My website is probably the best place to reach me. It's juliehalltherapy.com. And there's a way to connect with me, or anyone can reach out to me via email, and it's julie@juliehalltherapy.com. So then obviously you both have my contact information. So thank you so much.
And we're so excited.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. And remember, this is the power of family. Starts with how we show up. Connection is contagious. Pass it on. Thank you.
Thank you.